Hello ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I've just got back home from spending the day at a nearby convent, and this is something I do quite regularly, like a once a month retreat day. So while the sisters just get on with their day, whatever their day holds, I am given space to do my own thing within their grounds and within the room that they give me for the day. So it's like just a nice, for me, like a nice change of venue and just a nice space in a prayerful place to listen to God and pray for the day. And sometimes I've gone for a weekend or even a few days, like midweek as well. And I wasn't sure how many people are aware that anyone can do this. It doesn't have to be someone that's looking at becoming a nun. You don't have to be female to be a guest at a convent. You don't have to be the same tradition as the sisters. Like, anyone can be a guest at a convent that accommodates guests, and quite often you can stay for nights as well if you wanted to. So if it's something that interests you, like maybe you'd like just have a break from your current surroundings, or you'd find it helpful spiritually just to get away somewhere different for a change of scenery, or go somewhere that's quite a prayerful place in itself, to spend a day with God, or a weekend, or a few days as a little retreat on your own. And if you've never gone to a convent to do that kind of thing before, here's just a little video letting you know how to go about setting it up and just what to expect when you're there.
So first of all, you're going to want to arrange your stay, and it'll be quite easy just to use the internet to see which convents are near you. And then most communities have websites, and if they can accommodate guests, they'll have a part of their website that is entitled like guests or visitors or coming to stay, and that will give you all the information you need about being a guest, and it will tell you how to make inquiries for coming to stay. So it might be that you fill out a little web web inquiry form, or it might give you the email address of who to email. So then you would just send a little email or a little inquiry just saying, can I come and stay, or on this date or over these dates. Maybe let them know you've never come before. Here's an email that I sent recently, and then they'd get back to you, and then it just, they'd be expecting it to be in their diary. Quite a few convents are used to having guests, and they're used to having guests who've never stayed before. So everything should be well signposted. There are usually really good signs from the road of which drive the convents down. And once you get nearer the entrance, it's usually really obvious where the main front door is, and there's usually a doorbell to ring. And so you might need to wait like a minute or two for someone to get to you, because if it's quite a big building, it might take someone a while to actually get to the door. But don't forget that you're in their diary, they're expecting you, and because of that, they've probably been praying for you already that morning and praying for your stay. So someone will open the door for you and give you a warm welcome, either someone that helps at the convent or a sister herself. And if you're really not sure what to call someone, if they're in a habit and they're female obviously, then you can't really go wrong with calling them sister. You'll just be asked to sign in, and then you'll be taken to your room. So if you're just there for the day, then you might be in a room a bit like this. It might just have like a couple of chairs and a table or a sofa, something like that. If you've come as a small group, then you'll probably be in a room that looks a lot more like this. Or if you've come to spend a night as well, or a few nights, then you'll be in a room that's probably got a bed and a chair, or a couple of beds and a couple of chairs if you're in a double room. So you'll be shown to your room and have a chance to put your stuff down. And then if you've never been to the convent before, then whoever's showing you around will give you a tour of the whole building, or all the parts that are open to guests. So they'll make sure that you know where the chapel is, the refectory where you'll be eating, the toilets, all of that kind of thing. They'll show you where you can make tea and coffee for yourself throughout the day. And most importantly of all, they'll show you where you can help yourself to biscuits throughout the day. And talking of food, nuns take hospitality very seriously. In most convents that I go to, the sisters make sure that the guests have got lots of cake to help themselves to throughout the day as well. And the last thing is that there's usually some written information for guests, so the sister will just make sure that you know where to find that information, and it will include things like the service times and the meal times, stuff like that, and maybe information about just what to do when you're heading off as well, like signing out kind of process. If you've got any questions or anything you feel the sisters need to know, then now's the best time to mention it, because after this you'll basically be left to your own devices, so that the sister, if it's a sister that's been showing you around, will go back to whatever she needs to be doing at that point in the day, and you'll be left now for the rest of your stay just to have your own space to do what you like with the space. So you'll do your thing while the sisters do their thing, and you probably, although you might be with the sisters like for certain meals or in chapel if you choose to join them at their services, you probably won't speak to a sister again until it's time to go and say goodbye. I suppose there's a kind of convent etiquette. I guess convents might feel very unusually quiet to you if you're used to working or living in a busy environment. And so I guess if you're a guest at a convent, it's just good to try and enter into that quietness, especially the nearer you are to the convent chapel or to the part where the part of the building where the sisters actually have their own rooms. It's good to be like silent around those areas, and also you're then respecting other guests or other people who are trying to pray, but also it's good for yourself as well, because the more presumably you're going there because you feel that you would value some quietness yourself to listen to God in. Another little etiquette thing is just to be on time for things that you're joining the sisters at. So it might be that you want to go to some of their services, or you probably will be invited to have dinner with them or lunch, whatever you call it. So it's good, obviously, not to be late to those things. And you might hear a bell going off 5 minutes before the services, but that bell is normally positioned closer to the sisters and further away from where you will be as a guest. So you're better off just relying on your watch for being on time for things. The other little etiquette thing to bear in mind is that even though convents love welcoming guests to come and stay, it's also the sisters' own home. So just like you wouldn't go into someone's house and go upstairs or go into their back garden, it's exactly the same at a convent. So you'll probably find areas both inside the building and possibly outside in the grounds too that just say, but like, please can visitors not go beyond this part, because this is like the sisters' own quarters or the sisters' private area. When you're staying at a convent, you don't have to go to any of the services in the chapel if you don't want to. It might be that they're a very different tradition from your own, or it might just be that you want more space in your day without having to stop what you were doing to go to the chapel services. But at the same time, most religious communities I've stayed with, they're more than happy for guests to join them at their services. And there's usually they're very used to the fact that guests won't know their way around their prayer book. So there's usually like a little table or an area where they've got everything that you need as a guest for each service, and they'll have things marked up as clearly as possible. Like either they'll have a little booklet that's specifically for guests to use, or they'll let you know what page numbers you need to be on, that kind of thing, just to make it as easy as possible for you to join in with the service. And I suppose there are a couple of things to be aware of if you've not prayed with sisters before, is that you might be from a church tradition where you show that you really mean what you're saying or singing by speaking and singing loudly, whereas in a convent chapel everything is prayed out or sung quite quietly, more as a way of making sure that you internalize what you're saying. So just be prepared for the fact that it might feel very quiet to you, the worship. And obviously an etiquette thing would be just to make sure that you're not speaking or singing any louder than the sisters are. And then the other thing to be aware of is that you probably will end up reciting psalms in some of the services, and after a few seconds you'll notice that there's a pattern that either maybe one half of the chapel are reciting the odd numbered verses while the other half are reciting the even numbered verses, or maybe there's a leader that is saying the odd numbered verses, then everyone else says the even. But yeah, when it comes to reciting the psalms, you'll notice that there's a pattern going on, so just be aware of that too. Food! Most religious communities I've stayed with invite guests to share to join the sisters at their main meal, which will be about 12:30 or something. And I find it easiest just to go to whatever service is just before dinner, so that you all end up walking together from the chapel towards the refectory. And normally you might hang around for a couple of minutes, and quite often there might be a gong that a sister will sound to announce that dinner is ready. So then you'll all go and approach the tables, and if you're not sure where to sit, if you just like hover like I do, a sister will notice you hovering and point you in the right direction of which place you should sit at. And there'll probably be some form of grace, and then the meal is usually just eaten in silence, and it'll be very easy just to look around and see what's going on, whether you need to go up and serve yourself from somewhere or whether someone's bringing food to you. So you just enjoy your lovely meal in silence. What about staying the night? Well, you will have been shown your bedroom, and obviously bedding will be provided and towels, and then extra blankets in case you get really cold at night. But beyond that, from my experience, you need to bring everything else from home. So you need to bring your own toiletries and a hairdryer if you want to use a hairdryer. And yes, there's electricity in guest houses. You can so you can use a hairdryer or charge your phone overnight, and there may well be Wi-Fi in the guest house or even around the whole convent itself. So yeah, you may well find Wi-Fi information and the written information that you're given. You might have an ensuite room, or it might be probably more likely that there's a bathroom near your bedroom, like in the same corridor that you'd use or maybe share with one or two other guests. And there'll be a little living room or sitting room somewhere that you can especially spend the evenings in. And again, depending on how many other guests are there at the same time as you might have the whole living room to yourself in the evenings, or you might share it with others. And so I guess a good thing is just to be aware of whether they want to stay in silence in their evenings, or how quiet you need to be around them, and how they want to use that space, that shared space. It's nice to have an evening without any TV or internet, and convent guest house living rooms will often have like whole bookshelves of Christian books, maybe some novels as well, jigsaw puzzles, maybe some of those like adult colouring books and felt tips and that kind of stuff. And so you might just want to like curl up in an armchair or on a sofa with a book or something. And yeah, sometimes there's a little log fire, so you can get one of those going if it's the winter. Some communities invite guests to join the sisters in the refectory for their evening meal, but what I've come across more often is that guests will fix their own supper in the kitchen in the guest house. And yeah, in the kitchen, the guest house, the fridge and the cupboards will be well stocked. So you can, the kind of things I've made before have been things like scrambled eggs on toast, beans on toast, soup with bread, that kind of thing. You won't need to take any food with you to go and stay at a convent, because they'll make sure that everything that you need is in the guest house kitchen. And breakfast is always in the guest house as a guest. Well, I've never been anywhere where you join the sisters for breakfast, probably because they figure that guests probably don't want to get up as early as they do. So what do you actually do with all this time that you've got on your hands? Well, it's completely up to you, and you best know your personality and how you pray. The main advice that I found really useful for going away on a kind of retreat or quiet day, it is to not use it to catch up on reading, even if it's reading Christian books. The best advice I've been given is to put books aside so that you can listen to what God wants to say to you during your stay there. So you might just want to take a Bible and a journal, something like that. That's the advice that I've been given, and that's what I personally find very useful, because I'm much more listening to God in the space I've got at the convent, rather than reading and not necessarily listening to what God wants to say to me about my life at this particular point in my life. So you might want to like mix up your day a bit, spend some time in the room that you've been given, and then spend some time outside if the weather's all right. That there's usually a bench or two in the grounds that you can sit on. So I've often taken a travel mug and filled it with tea and gone out into the grounds and sat there for a bit. And yeah, you're probably not going to want to spend like every single hour of the day praying and writing in your journal. You're going to want breaks as well. So you might just want to go for a walk in the grounds, or just go exploring. It might be that you're in a place where you actually can go for a proper long walk. There might be like country lanes nearby, or a wood on the grounds, or that kind of thing. There might actually be a kind of guided walk, but clip where you're staying, that kind of thing. Even if it's not good weather, there are usually things in the guest house or in the room you're staying that you can do, like colouring or jigsaws, that kind of thing. Or you might just want to go exploring around the convent, around all the bits that the guests are allowed around. So yeah, just mix it up throughout the day, I guess. And it's up to you if you want to go to any of the services in the chapel. But even when there aren't any services on, if no one's in the chapel, you can, usually they don't mind at all for guests to go in there on their own and just pray quietly in there if the chapel's not being used. So that's another nice way of mixing up your day a bit. So yeah, it's completely up to you what you do. It's your space, and or even more than that, I guess it's giving God space, or giving space to listen to God, to what God might want to say to you on that day or over those days, or just do in you in that silence and in that space. So what do you do when the time has come that when you're leaving the convent to go back home? Well, in the information that you will have been given when you arrived, they'll let you know where the donations box is, because convents depend a lot on donations, and they'll probably let you know what the suggested donation is per day for a guest. So you'd obviously want to make a donation, and they find it really helpful if you're a taxpayer, if you can gift aid it. But also, if you really genuinely can't afford the suggested donation, that they wouldn't want it to stop you coming to stay. So they would ask that you just give what you can of the suggested donation. If you've stayed the night or a few nights, that it's likely that they'll ask you to strip your bed and make put on new bedding for the next guest, just to be helpful in that way. And then you're likely to need to sign out and return any keys that you were given during your stay. And some communities encourage you to do things like ring the doorbell when you're going, just so they can make sure that a sister says goodbye to you. So that's a really nice way to end your stay, when you actually you sort of speak to a sister again and say goodbye. Then the last thing is just to have a safe journey home. And hopefully you had a really nice day or few days at the convent, and hopefully it wasn't just that it was a nice space while you were there, but hopefully whatever you felt God saying to you, or doing in you, or just the rest that you had, will benefit you in such a way that you'll take that back to your normal life, and it will have a positive effect on your life back home and back at work.
So that's given you an idea of the kind of thing that I try to do about one day a month, and I hope it's answered your questions, or given you an idea of something that to try yourself if you've never stayed at a convent for a quiet day yourself. So yeah, I hope this little video has stopped you being too shy or too nervous to get in touch with a convent, and arranging a date that works for you and for them, when you can have a whole quiet day to yourself, or a few days, stay a few nights, stay the weekend, something like that, and just have some a nice change of scenery from home, and some stillness and some quiet to listen to God and have a time of kind of spiritual renewal.